But we've got to be able to look around us and see what's going on and how what we do affects other people and see what they need from us and be willing to make the changes necessary to meet those needs in relationships. But
Well,
people who won't do that find themselves living in the past. And it's a lonely, desolate place to be.
Welcome back to What to Say and How to Say It. We've been talking with Kyle Hargrove, our favorite licensed professional counselor, about the 5 things you need to quit doing to change your relationships. Last time we talked about trying to please everyone. You got to stop being a people pleaser. The second thing was to stop fearing change. And we gave you a few ideas around that. Today, we're going to nail down the remaining 3 of the 5, and you're not going to want to miss this, because if you're doing these things in your relationship, I am going to tell you, this is not our first rodeo. We've been at this for over, 50 years collectively, experientially. Kyle's been a counselor for 30 some years. I've been doing communication coaching for 30 years. There's a little bit of experience here. We're going to tell you, if you don't stop doing these 5 things, you are destined to blow up your relationships. And so we ended with stop fearing change. Now I want to talk about the next one, which is stop living in the past. Kyle, what's going on with that?
Well, it's good to see you again, Nina. And thanks for inviting me again. And it's interesting sometimes when you look at this list collectively and see which ones tie into the ones before or after. And there's a definite attachment that happens between number 2 and number 3, fearing change and living in the past. Because fearing change or refuting it, not allowing yourself to move forward and progress through change, causes you to maintain a status in a place that doesn't exist anymore. And that's the past. In order to live in the present and look forward to the future, we have to adapt. We have to look around us. We have to read the signs. And I'm not talking about road signs or caution or stop. Well, maybe they are. Maybe a caution sign or a stop sign sometimes is a good thing in a relationship. But we've got to be able to look around us and see what's going on and how what we do affects other people and see what they need from us and be willing to make the changes necessary to meet those needs in relationships. But people who won't do that find themselves living in the past. And it's a lonely, desolate place to be.
So what questions should we be asking ourselves when we're in that place? How do we get our head out of the past?
Well, a good one to start with is, do I have any friends, or why don't I have any friends?
Why do you say that? That's funny.
Why don't people want to be around me? What's the big deal? All I'm doing is trying to make the world a better place. I know it may sound like complaining to you, but to me, it's just righting wrongs. Okay. The person that lives in the past is angry and bitter almost all the time.
Good point.
Transversely, the person that lives in the future is anxious and worried all the time about how bad things might be or about things that probably won't ever even happen.
So there's people that live in both the past and the future at the same time. And it sounds like, well, you're just gonna, because you always. Yeah. Right? I mean, if you think about that, you're just going to do this terrible thing because you always did that terrible thing. Right. And so in the what to say and how to say it space, I look at that and I go, okay, so you can live in those 2 dimensions if you want to, or you can look at what's happening right now, which is I just gave you a compliment. And if you can just receive those words for what they are, I'm being positive and supportive here. I'm sensing you're seeing something else. Do you want to talk about that? Or do you want to receive what just happened in reality?
I don't know. It depends what's going to be expected of me. Do I want to talk about that? Probably not.
Yeah. So the whole joining people in reality and the now that we're in is a challenging thing for sure. And it costs people something because they have to let go of the past.
Yeah. Well, here's a clue too. When you hear people using absolutes, you just use two of them in the same statement.
Yep.
You're going to do something and you always do something.
Mm-hmm.
Okay. That's a clue that somebody is spending a pretty good bit of time in a place that no longer exists.
Mm-hmm. You never.
Okay. Yeah. So presuming what people are going to do I'm not saying it's a bad thing to do. Sometimes it's what protects us. We have memories of things that have happened to us that shouldn't have, or that were unfortunate. And so we learn to read what's going on to determine how to protect ourselves. However, the emotions that go with that, if we continue attaching them in the present, okay, we're not moving.
Yeah.
We're not moving. We're not getting off our fannies out of the past and we're dug in. Mm-hmm. The interesting thing about both the past and the future is that if you're spending a significant amount of time in either one of them, or God forbid, both of them, okay, it is exhausting. Being angry and bitter or anxious and worried takes every bit of energy you may have in a given day. Mm-hmm. Oh, wait a minute. What about that day? You got nothing left for it.
Yeah.
How are you going to make the most out of the day you're living in if you're spending your energy in places that don't exist anymore or that haven't happened yet?
Yeah.
And here's one more interesting part. Yesterday, God was there. Today, he's not.
No, he's now here, right?
Tomorrow, he's going to be there. He's promised. He's going to show up and do his part. But if you're already there, expecting to see him tomorrow. So it's a choice to live in a godless place.
Ooh. Whoa. That's legit right there. Live in a godless place. Yeah. When we're not living in the now, in the reality that's right now, we're living in a godless place. And that's not saying that he doesn't transcend time, because he does, but we don't. We're physically here in this moment, and so is he. Did we miss it? That's really powerful.
You remember the Gary Larson The Far Side cartoon?
Yeah.
Where the kid is at the steps of the I think it says Midvale School for the Gifted. And the door says, pull. And he is pushing as hard as he can. Okay. One of my favorite, I remember it all. That gives you an idea. One of my favorite Larson cartoons ever. But that's what we're actually doing when we choose to go backward or forward. We're pushing against what God wants for us. Mm-hmm. There's a definite flow to that door. And when we're wanting to go there or here, we're breaking the flow. We're going against it. And it takes more energy to actually get there and get the dadgum door open than it does to deal with whatever it is that we have there that obviously means so much to us.
Yeah. No, that's legit. And I like the reminder around always and nevers, absolutes, black and white thinking, super unhealthy, not useful. Nobody always does anything ever. Yeah. Well, that's just, we're inconsistent by nature. Even if we are consistent in general, we're still not perfect at anything.
Exactly.
So there's that. So let's move on here to the next one, which is putting yourself down.
Oh, me?
No,
I could never do that.
In general.
Oh, stop it. Yeah, you can't say those things about me because, no, go ahead. Say those things about me. Putting yourself down. It is so woven into the fabric of who we are and what we do. Self-defacing language. The reason it's woven in is because it's what dominates up here. Mm-hmm. Okay. And what dominates here is what comes out there, and what comes out there determines our reality. Okay. So putting yourself down, telling yourself what a loser you are, calling yourself foul names that you would never call anybody else out loud.
Yep.
These are signs of a self-worth and a self-esteem that is hurting, that is damaged and that really needs some significant work to pull itself back together. Um, I'm this is like the hair club commercial right here. This one is for me,
No.
you know, I'm not just the owner of the hair club. I'm a customer too. Well, obviously not, but I'm not just in a place on a daily basis to talk about people and putting themselves down. I'm a person who struggles with that. I
Yeah,
do. I struggle with
me too.
putting myself down and locking myself in, like, burying my feet in cement in places where I've failed so that I am making sure I never have the opportunity to get out.
Mm-hmm.
It's a scary place to live. And I find myself frustrated so frequently. And it would be amazing to you if I told you all the things I call myself when I do or don't do the smallest of things, which are certainly not worthy of the monikers, but it is indicative of the level of frustration that I'm feeling based on what happened.
Yeah. Well, and we all have those places within us, right? Some of us, that's our natural go-to because we're not at, our best in those moments, or we have these expectations, or we don't know how to be a friend of ourselves or whatever, or we just are. Sometimes when you live on the edge, and you're stepping out there and doing stuff and then something goes wrong. I know for me, the space that makes it most challenging is either when I was raising little kids and something would go wrong. Oh my word. Oh, I'm a terrible mom, right? Or
Yeah.
I'm a terrible wife, or, all these things. Now I'm a terrible leader. No, actually, I'm just a human being. And I'm being inept at the moment at that one thing. This is normal Christian living. How I choose to talk to myself is going to determine whether or not I get up again and try.
Right.
That, and it is a battle, and the enemy lives in that. He wants us down. He wants us to stay down. And it's a battle worth fighting. And it is harder. I know for myself, it's harder when I'm sick, when I'm tired, when I've been doing too much, when I've got too much going on, too many things, too many people, too much, whatever. Yeah.
And this creeps in places. That's why I want to say, it's a creepy, crawly thing. It invades us without us even knowing.
Mm-hmm.
And I remember playing a card game with some people when I was probably early teens, maybe not quite there. And I remember one kid just kept losing and kept losing and kept losing. And finally he threw his cards down. He says, "Grandma was right. I'm not smart enough to be an astronaut," and ran off,
Oh, wow.
So it's like okay, where did that come from? And what's that all about? We were playing old maid, or whatever the case might have been. But, the things that have been said to us in the past have been spoken into us, especially if they've been done consistently or from and by people that we look up to and respect. Your words matter so much.
Oh, yeah.
So when you think about what's in yourself, that's one thing, but think about what you speak into other people as well when it comes to what they think of themselves and what they say to themselves, all that self-talk that goes on when they're in the midst of a struggle.
Mm-hmm.
The worst thing can come up in the simplest scenario, and there's a reason for it.
Yeah, that's so true. And the answer to that is not pride. Because, the pendulum swingers, which I've been one, I'll grab onto that thing and, okay, well, I'm not going to talk bad about myself. I'm going to be so awesome. I'm amazing. No, Nina, that's not it either. Be like, hey, that was cool. I did a thing, awesome, whatever. But that holistic, prideful, pumping up thing is also actually garbage. The most healthy self-talk that we have is actually dialogue with the Lord. Hey, God, what do you think about that? Oh, sweetheart, that was really funny. I don't know if you should do that again that way. Yeah, I don't either.
But I got a good laugh out of it.
Yeah, we all got a good laugh out of that. But that's what happens, right? It's kind of like stealing lobster crackers from the restaurant and then returning them later, right? We don't do it perfectly, and we're not expected to. And so why do that? And why swing from one side to the other? So we've got in our list of 5 things to quit doing right now. We've got trying to please everybody, fearing change, living in the past or future, putting yourself down. And then this last one is overthinking.
Oh,
I think we lost him. Yeah. Yeah. Can you define first what that even is? Because I think there's people that don't really know.
well, let me define it for you the way that I do. I have to break things down into their simplest form. Part of this is because when they're not in their simplest form, I don't understand them as well. Hey, that made sense.
Makes
Didn't
sense.
it?
Yeah, perfect.
That's very practical. This is actually, one of the ways that I have to work on daily myself in terms of putting myself down, because I think just because I understand things better in their simplest form is not a matter of my intelligence level. It's not a matter of what I'm capable of. It's a matter of my learning style.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, so sometimes the simplest form is a picture.
Absolutely.
And I love to see images and illustrations and graphics that go along with topics and things that I want to remember.
Mm-hmm.
And as a result, I utilize a lot of those things in the therapy that I do and in the coaching. So overthinking, the industry word is over identification.
Okay.
Okay. Well, that's a long word, and it stimulates a lot of thoughts in my brain about what is that. And so I understand what it is. But so the cultural word, our society's word, culture right now, is overthinking. Okay. And my word, it helps me and others understand better, is you got to thinky.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Okay.
You
But
got to.
everybody understands what that means. Too
Everybody understands
thinky.
being too thinky, right?
Right. Right.
Yeah. That's like having a glonky day. I had a glonky day today,
No, I
and
don't know what that means. I'm thinking
but
of
see, you
horses
wouldn't even
trotting.
question it. You wouldn't even question it. You would say, I don't know what that means, but I have a pretty good idea of the direction it's going in.
It's
So,
kind of clunky, clunky, glunky.
clunky, glonky. Actually, that's a therapist. That's a client word that I have adopted.
I like
So one said I had a glonky day, and I thought, what is glonky? No, I'm not even going to ask because I'm pretty sure I know. But being too thinky is just it's allowing the worst of our brains and of ourselves to take over our thought process.
Mm-hmm.
And we have best and we have worst. We have things about us that are great, that are fantastic, that any mother would love. And then we have things about us that just aren't so hot. Thoughts that we think, ideas that we have, things we would do if we thought we could get away with it. The darkest, deepest, most horrible, poisonous, toxic things in our brain take over when we allow ourselves to overthink.
Mm-hmm.
And when that occurs, it typically, well, not typically, I should not have said that. It often is about things that are about to happen, or things that we perceive are about to happen. And so we begin making scenarios in our mind about what it's going to be like, what it's going to look like, taste like, smell like, and it may smell bad. But typically,
you just left the present.
Yeah, you did.
Yeah.
You did. Overthinking takes you out of the reality of what truly is going on. And it's always ended up this way when this happens. I always end up getting the raw end of the deal and the short stick. Da, 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 da. So that's going back to the past and being bitter about it,
Mm-hmm.
instead of saying, what can I change about the future and make that a better scenario for me?
Mm-hmm.
Okay. The other is, this is what it's going to look like. And it's going to bite the big one. It's going to be awful. It's going to be the worst ever. No, not the worst ever. Worse than the worst ever. Okay. And so we think through and we think through. We take a breath and we go, okay, I'm not done yet. And we think through it again. And each time we do it, it gets worse and worse and worse. Okay. And it just blows up into this huge thing. Again, like I said earlier, that is typically not going to be as bad as we imagined it. And as often as not, never even happens.
Well, yeah.
And we ask God why we have nightmares. God, why can't I have good dreams? Well, I think often what we dream about is what's already in our head.
Mm-hmm.
When we're allowing that negative stuff and that, worst case scenario to dominate the landscape, it kind of takes its place in pretty much every area of our lives.
So when you're working with people on overthinking, it's not exactly easy for them to lasso each one of those thoughts initially.
Right.
It's work, it's intense, it's exhausting, and it's worth doing.
It's literally manual labor.
Yeah.
And sometimes I've had the sweat to prove it.
Mm-hmm.
when you have to stop yourself,
Mm-hmm.
you literally have to direct every thought and every word in a direction that doesn't feel natural and it doesn't feel right because it's not your MO, it's not your default setting. That's work. And that'll wear you out in every way possible.
Yeah, it is exhausting. But you get better at it.
Yep.
The more, it's like building muscles, they're wimpy and weak at first, and then over time they get stronger and we get better at it. Yeah. And so when God tells us to take every thought captive and tame it to the mind of Christ, I mean, that word tame is pretty doggone active. That I have a lion tamer in my head, with a chair and a whip, and it's like this aggressive, terrifying potential. So they need to be fought and tamed. The other piece of taming is also saying, oh, no, you don't, that's not a thought to pay attention to, so a gentle taming, if you will, like gentling a horse, right? Where you're like, hey, it's okay. We don't have to do this. Let's do it this way instead.
Imagine this. And I want you to be honest here. Okay. Imagine you get a text from your husband mid-afternoon, 2:30. Mm-hmm. And it says, I don't know what you had planned for dinner tonight, but let's go to dinner, just you and I. There are some things I'd like to discuss. Mm-hmm. And that's it.
Yeah.
Where does your mind go?
I'm excited.
Are you?
Now, I know that's not typical, right?
Okay, good.
But I
totally blew my analogy. Thanks so much.
I'm sorry. Well, you told me to be honest. I mean, I'm excited. I'm interested because I realize I'm not typical in this space. I like change. I like challenge. Most of the time, especially when I'm at my best, I live on that stuff. Yeah. And it because I love where God's going, and it is always something like that. Most of the people I work with, and I've been in this space, and when I'm not at my best, I'd be like, oh dear God, no. What have I done? To be honest, I'd have some sort of mild heart attack.
And I think that the analogy that probably, fits more outside the relationship realm is at work. When the boss sends you an email and says, need to visit with you about something. How about you come by at 2?
Yeah. Yeah.
And it's 9:30 a.m.
Yes. You get 5 hours of stress.
You have to change your clothes 3 times before 2, because you're so stressed and you're sweating bullets and that's probably not the greatest leadership style in terms of sending that message, but it happens. It happens all the time. And that's just an example of a simple and practical and, an example that happens a lot of overthinking is when you get part of a message or you get the top part of the message, but none of the paragraphs below.
We did a survey of 100 of our customers about 10 years ago around some of the phrases that women say to their spouse and the husbands say back to them, and what the reactions were. And one of the most common ones that women will say to start stuff is, we need to talk. Yeah. And so we threw that out there and we said, husbands, what do you think of that? What's your initial gut reaction? And the most common response was terror, fear. My favorite one was this quote that was, quote, Mr. T, there's going to be pain. Just thought, so I started telling women, don't ever say that. This is not a good thing to bring to the table because it causes, like you said, it causes that overthink, or it can facilitate it for people.
Well, it's kind of the antithesis of the, you go to the doctor and say, doc, it hurts when I do this. Doc says, don't do that. So in therapy, there's a fight every time I say this. And I go, don't say that.
Yeah, stop doing it. You see, they're kind of, yeah.
Stop it. Quit that.
So we've got 5 of these things. Try to stop trying to please everyone. Stop fearing change. Stop living in the past. Stop putting yourself down, and stop overthinking. And those are it is a lot, and it's not easy to do. And that's why you and I have employment. So that's why our ministry exists. But it's a beautiful thing when we start living biblically, because there's freedom in Christ. And I just want to leave our listeners with one thing that they can go do right now. Yes, for all practical purposes, listen to the next episode. You'll learn more about conflict resolution and how to, make things work in your relationships for sure. But if you want more around this particular stop doing this thing, go ahead and go to our website at greaterimpact.org, and you'll get a little free download. It's called Stop Walking on Eggshells, and that'll give you some other tips that you can use in that space. But we're here to help you move forward in your most prevalent relationship, that of your marriage, and your more challenging one. So anyway, I hope all of this helps. It's been great talking with you, Kyle. Thanks for being here.
Likewise. Thank you.